And we're joined now by former Undersecretary of State Ambassador Wendy Sherman and Jeremy Bash, a former Chief of Staff at the CIA and Defense Department. Evelyn Farkas is still with us, all our MSNBC analysts. And Ambassador Sherman, I want to start with you. We just heard Congressman Peter Welch create some breaking news here. He's a member of the committee who's heard the testimony of Ambassador Sondland, now Ambassador Taylor. He believes that Gordon Sondland now is very close to or in danger of perjury charges for his testimony.
Well, Lawrence, I'll leave that to the lawyer in the trio here this evening, Jeremy, but I will say that there is absolutely no reason not to believe everything that Bill Taylor has said. I first served with Bill Taylor when I was the Assistant Secretary for Legislative Affairs in the first Clinton administration. After the fall of the Soviet Union, I got the help to get the first $1.2 billion for the newly independent states. And Bill was in charge of what was called the Freedom Fund to try to give that money to the states. And it was very bipartisan. I remember quite clearly Senator McConnell pressing us very hard for $300 million to go to Ukraine. He was terribly, terribly concerned about Ukraine and its future and its destiny and separating it from Russia. So what your colleagues on the camera said before us, what the members of Congress said, is quite true. And Bill Taylor has been committed to a free and open Europe ever since. And so I think, yes, this puts Gordon Sondland in great jeopardy, because I think that listening to the detailed accounting that Bill Taylor gave, it's very hard to not believe him and very easy to question Sondland.
And Jeremy Bash, that's what the perjury case would come down to, at least as we know it at this stage. It would be the credibility of William Taylor versus the credibility of Gordon Sondland.
Yeah, and I think the important point here, Lawrence, is that President Trump's own handpicked special envoy or ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, acknowledged, as we now see from this witness testimony, that there was a demand for a quid pro quo. And specifically what Ambassador Taylor, the well-respected career diplomat who has served Democrats and Republicans in every administration since 1985, as referenced earlier, served in the 101st Airborne in Vietnam, started his career at West Point. What he said today was that when he was talking to the National Security Council was expressing concern because Gordon Sondland had said to Zelensky's team explicitly, and here it is on the page, that there was no money that would be given for security assistance until the Ukrainians pursued an investigation of Joe Biden and Burisma. That's clear. It's on the page. It's Bill Taylor's absolutely 100% crystal clear testimony.
And Evelyn, the testimony as he continues, he talks about Fiona Hill and Mr. Vindman trying to reassure him that they were not aware of any official change in U.S. policy. Let me just read that. He says, despite OMB's announcement that they were holding back the funding, he said, but they did confirm that the hold on security assistance for Ukraine came from Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, and that the Chief of Staff maintained a skeptical view of Ukraine. And so now Ukraine policy is turning on what Mick Mulvaney thinks after the Congress has ordered this aid.
Right. I mean, Lawrence, the U.S. government's position is that we must support Ukraine. Why? Because if we let Ukraine become basically a vassal of Russia, then essentially we will have allowed Russia a sphere of influence, and that runs counter to everything we now believe in post-World War II. Borders, the right for peoples to determine their own future, democracy. I mean, the young people in Ukraine, as the ambassador pointed out in his testimony, they very clearly said, we want a new future, we want a democratic future, we don't want corruption. So now these two individuals, I mean, Mick Mulvaney and the president, are trying to turn the entire policy around, it looks like. I mean, they're throwing it into question. And that's really problematic because, again, Congress has spoken, the executive branch has spoken writ large. The cabinet still thinks that this is our policy. So this is a renegade policy that somehow the president has tried to convince his chief of staff and others to implement.
We have to squeeze in a break here. Former Ambassador Wendy Sherman, Jeremy Bash, Evelyn Farkas, thank you all for joining this discussion tonight. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.